So what does anxiety feel like as a guy? I'm a guy, you can tell because I'm wearing a leather jacket. So I want to tell you exactly what it feels like because I've struggled with anxiety in my life, and hopefully this will help determine if you have anxiety or maybe if you have something else. Actually, the real reason that I'm wearing this is so hopefully the weather gods will bring about spring, because I used to ride a motorcycle a lot and I'm just tired of all this rainy weather and all this snowy weather that we've been having. So hopefully that happens. Although I don't have a motorcycle currently. I need to get another one. But anyway, I digress. When it comes to anxiety, what does it feel like? Because it can feel like a bunch of different things and maybe some unexpected things. Now I'll tell you a little bit about my own story. I've struggled with anxiety on and off for most of my life. There's been things that have happened when I was a kid that were really strange. Like I felt like sick and stuff like that as a kid, and I didn't really understand why. And it turns out a lot of that stuff was actually most likely anxiety. So when I've experienced anxiety in the past, there are usually three main symptoms that I personally experience because everyone experiences anxiety a little bit differently. The biggest one I usually feel is nauseous. My stomach just feels upset and it just doesn't feel good. 2, I will oftentimes feel really overwhelmed, like there's not enough time to do things, that I'm always frazzled, like I can't really focus on things because there's so much going on. I kind of feel like I'm in a little bit of a tornado. And the last thing that I experience when I have a lot of anxiety is panic attacks, and those things are not fun. One more thing I wanted to talk about before I dive into the panic attack aspect of this anxiety that I've had in the past is one of the ways that anxiety used to manifest itself a lot when I was in my early 20s was anger. I was angry a lot, and I didn't necessarily know why. So if you find yourself experiencing a lot of anger and snapping at people and just kind of flying off the handle a lot, it might not be the situation around you, it might be what's going on inside of you. And the anger and lashing out might be your way of trying to deal with the uncomfortableness of the unknown, of whatever that anxiety and stress is causing within you. Now, what does a panic attack feel like? I'll tell you, they are not fun. I've probably had a few dozen of them over the course of my life. And the way that I experience them, and like I said, everyone is a little bit different, is I start shaking and I feel really nauseous, like I'm gonna throw up. A lot of times I don't necessarily get scared, but I'm a little bit nervous that something is wrong with me. And especially at first when I didn't know what was necessarily going on. And for me, my panic attacks usually last between 20 minutes and maybe even an hour or so. Oh, and I forgot to tell you about the most embarrassing symptom of my panic attacks that sometimes happens is I actually faint. Yes, just like a Southern belle, I will actually get so worked up. In the past, I have fainted, and it's no fun because there's been times where I've hit my head on different things and it just sucks. And I ended up getting checked out by the doctor because I thought something might be wrong with my heart or something like that. But turns out it's just high anxiety. So what does that mean about me as a person, or maybe about you if you struggle with anxiety? So I'll tell you a little bit about me. Here's some MMA gloves. Here's some boxing gloves. Here's a fake pistol. I wouldn't consider myself a weak person. I'm a pretty strong person. I've done a bunch of boxing and jiu-jitsu and Krav Maga. I've ridden motorcycles. I play guitar. I wouldn't say I'm your typical guy's guy because I don't really like sports that much except for like fighting sports. Yet I struggled a lot with anxiety. So just because you struggle with anxiety or you might be a little bit nervous at times, it doesn't mean necessarily anything about you. It might just be your disposition. I think probably part of anxiety is genetic. It might be how you grew up, or maybe you just got caught in a bad mental pattern and you can't seem to get your way out of it. So if you are a guy or a girl or someone in between and you struggle with anxiety, it does not make you a weak person, and it just means that you have a problem. And you have a choice if you have a problem. You can solve it or attempt to solve it, or you can keep running away. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story, my personal story from me. When I was growing up in high school, I was pretty small, and actually this story took place in junior high. And I was pretty small, I was pretty geeky, and I was at a school dance, and this guy who was a little bit of a bully, he went up to me and he sprayed me with silly string. And I took the silly string off and I threw it back on him. And he then proceeded to punch me in the stomach, which knocked all of the wind out of me. And I remember crumpling to the floor. And at that moment, I just sort of made a vow to myself that no one would be able to do that to me again. And so it was kind of really at that point that I started getting really interested in martial arts and things like that. And then it's an interest that has continued decades further. And now, the thing that I like about that story, or the thing I want to illustrate, is that I didn't run away. I didn't say, okay, I'm gonna try to avoid all fights at all possible. Instead, no, I actually put myself in a lot of different positions where I would have to fight. Yes, I'd have to fight with gloves and things like that in a kind of controlled environment, but still, I was gonna get punched in the stomach a lot. I was gonna get punched in the face a lot. I've broken lots of different bones through all of my MMA training and stuff like that. And what that has allowed me to do is to become stronger. You don't get stronger by running away. You only get stronger by facing something. And so, how do you face anxiety? I think that there is one way that you can face anxiety and at the same time train your brain to a new default mode where you're not as anxious. And that is through meditation. You can think of it like this. If you're a naturally anxious person, probably your worst enemy at this point is your mind, because it is your mind that is terrifying you. Thinking about the potential futures that might happen, bad things happening, bad luck happening, you getting sick, your loved ones dying, all these things that kind of run through your head, losing your job. Or maybe you think about things that have happened in the past, all the different mistakes you've made in conversations or social situations, or even bigger mistakes than that, whatever it might be. It is your mind creating these things. And you can distract yourself. You can get out of your mind by getting into something that's maybe not as healthy, like video games, or drugs, alcohol, pornography, whatever it is, to distract yourself from what's going on in your brain. And that's another symptom of anxiety, or it could be at least, if you find yourself trying to numb your experience through the use of outside things. Now, the bravest thing you can do, and I think the most effective thing you can do, is to face your mind. And you do that through meditation. And what meditation really does is it allows you to realize some of the false beliefs that might be going on in your mind, while at the same time training your brain to a new default mode where you're feeling more confident and more relaxed and just more at ease in general. And over time, that lowers your anxiety, so you're not experiencing as much. It's not a magic bullet. You'll still have emotions. You'll still feel anxious sometimes. I still feel anxious sometimes, and that is okay. But that anxiety doesn't run my life. It's not keeping me from social situations. It's not keeping me from having adventures in life. And in general, my life is just a lot better. And your life can be a lot better too. So if you wanted to get started with something like this, go down to the notes, the description of this podcast episode, and I'll link to a bunch of different resources. I'll probably link to a different YouTube video that I'm gonna post, or that has already been posted. I'll also link to maybe an episode of my podcast, Shut Up Brain, that talks about meditation, and I'll also link you to a free guided meditation, so you can actually get started and you'll know that you're doing it the right way. A way that's actually going to help your anxiety and train yourself to become stronger, because that is what we want. So if you found this episode to be useful, then go ahead and hit that like button. It super helps me out. And if you want to see more stuff like this, hit that subscribe button too. That way you'll be notified, especially if you hit that little bell symbol, of whenever I post a new video, which is every week. So I'll see you next week.